Buenos días a todos, gracias por acompañarnos en este evento. Como hemos dicho, pues seguramente después de una larga y dura noche en Barcelona, como es habitual. Bonjour, je vous remercie d'être ici avec nous. Donc, comme je pense, notamment après une longue nuit, comme c'est l'habitude de Barcelone. So in fact, the third year I am here in this scenario, sharing with you our vision of custom identity. However, this time has a special relevance for us. Some months ago, Mitek, a listed Nasdaq company, acquired ICA, so now this acquisition strengthens us as a global leader for identity digital verification. It expands our scope of document coverage for North America, Europe, and Latin America. And it extends our expertise in computer vision, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and biometric facial recognition. The combination of these technologies allows us to build the most powerful digital identity verification solution. Further, it involves the creation of the best R&D team in this industry. From our point of view, for many companies, customer identity is a key factor for their business. So, let me ask something. Who are the biggest buyers of digital identity verification solutions? If you answer central governments or police agencies, you would be wrong. Private companies like banks and telcos are spending more than $1 billion per year. This reflects the pivotal role of identity verification in this industry, where it's fundamental to building customer trust and having secure transactions. However, security is only one part of the identity management equation. In this digital world, where data is surging in volume and velocity, our customers are accessing services from multiple platforms. Identities are increasingly complex and expensive. To put that in perspective, identity access management represents more than 30% of a large company security budget. And these costs are rising all the time. So today, we have a terrific panel moderated by Sarah Pratt, our Senior Vice President of Global Product Management, where our key speakers will talk about challenges of identity verification in this digital transformation we are living right now. So, please, Sarah.
Great, thank you. Seemed loud. I'm Sarah Clark, Senior Vice President of Product at Mitek, and it's such an honor to be here with this esteemed panel today. To start, why don't we go starting with Hugo. Introduce yourself, name, company, and a very brief introduction to how your role relates to digital identity verification.
Thank you, Sarah. So first, thank you to Mitek and Anchor for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here, share our experience. My name is Hugo Monreal. I'm a Director of Operations, Technology and Innovations in a company named For Finance. For Finance is a European leader in digital consumer finance. So we provide credit, we provide loans to customers in a fast and convenient way, okay? So how this is connecting to the topic today is that the identification is a key part in our onboarding processes. A major key in our success is to provide the credit in a fast way, in a convenient way. And for this, we need to provide this experience, but on the other hand, we need to be compliant and we need to fight against fraud, right? So how we do this, it's part of the thing I would like to share with you today.
Claire?
Hi, good morning. So I'm Claire Maslin, I'm CMO for Consult Hyperion. We are a very technical consultancy focused with a heritage on payments and digital identity. My background though is I spent 10 years or so at Telefonica O2 working on payments and identity. I feel as though we should start dancing or something with this music. Then more recently I also spent some time at the GSMA working on Mobile Connect. So my knowledge for this particular topic is really about the experience of operators globally and looking at the standards and the efforts that GSMA has made on Mobile Connect.
Great. Christophe?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Christophe van der Putten. I'm working as CEO for Untitled. We are a software telecom company specialized in MVNO and MVNE solutions. Our business case is a business, of course, regulation driven due to the terrorist attacks in Brussels, Paris. We have a regulation in Belgium that the user should register themselves before using mobile services. We see this that also other countries in Europe are following this. So we made our own Know Your Customers platform, and for us there were two big opportunities. First of all, the added value for the MVNO. What's the added value? You need a process which is very easy for the customers, but maybe due to this identification they can add extra services like commercial opt-in. And for the end user it was very important that we had a registration process that's real time, because customers want to go into a shop, buy a card, go out and start mobile services. So the identification process needs very fast.
David?
Good morning. My name is David Lázaro. I'm a managing director for Accenture Security. I'm currently leading our business in financial services for Europe and Latin America. And as part of our security business, we are driving consulting, implementation, and managed service around security, and particularly identity and embedding identity in all the digital transformation programs that we are driving with our clients. And really, as a part of the discussion that we will have today, we are finding that probably between 10–15% of the budget in the big digital transformation programs is allocated to, or should be allocated to security, and particularly to identity. So it's clear a key challenge and a key pillar of the new digital world.
Vicente?
Hello, and thanks for inviting me for participating in the panel. My name is Vicente Segura, and I work in 11 Paths, which is the cybersecurity unit of Telefonica. My role in 11 Paths is I'm head of identity and access management in the product area. So our role is to create solutions for our customers. We have our own products in identity, but also we combine it with partner products to create those solutions. Particularly, we have a digital signature product called SealSign, also Latch, which is a product for allowing customers to control access to their digital services, and also Mobile Connect, which is a specification from GSMA and authentication, a portfolio of identity services.
And finally, Julio.
Yes. Hi, my name is Julio César Pea. I'm the technical director of biocryptology. I'm the one in charge to lead the development of our products. Thank you very much, Mitek, for the invitation here. I'm very glad and honored to be here. Biocryptology is a company that is developing a product that will allow the user or the people to be in control of their identity at the end. In the market, there is a lot of products that are targets to companies to solve identity issues, to identify the customers, know their customers. In our case, we see that the problem is, well, today it's the companies because legislation they need to follow, but also the main problem is the user. You as a user, you have no control of your identity. You've been rolling in several places with no control, outdated data, track of your information everywhere. And what we do by cryptology is to give back to you the control of your identity so that you can provide your information to any company that's requested, and you allow it, and then if you don't want that they continue to have your information, then you can revoke it. So that's a product we're developing as a solution for the identity crisis.
Great, thank you. So, as we already reviewed, digital transformation is, happening across all verticals, and that's driving big increases in user experience expectations. People want to sign up now. They want a decision in real time. They want access to products and services in real time. And alongside those challenges, to create those amazing digital user journeys comes increased digital fraud. We've seen measured increases in fraudulent accounts being opened across verticals by folks that are using stolen and synthetic identities. And last, we have regulations. Regulations requiring more customer due diligence, more know your customer being applied across various use cases. So this is all driving a huge need for digital identity verification as a strategic imperative. It can be a great challenge, but if done right, as part of an amazing digital user journey, it can be a great differentiator. So I want to start by talking in a bit more detail. Some of you have already touched on this, but starting with some of the use cases driving the need for digital identity verification that you see in your businesses or your customers' businesses. And then we'll move on to looking at the emerging best practices. So what are the technologies, what are the tools being used to implement those great user journeys? And then lastly, we'll look at digital identity as a strategic imperative. Consumer info, subscriber info, how that can be used as a strategic asset to provide solutions for digital identity. So let's start with use cases. Vicente, let me ask you first, through the lens of Telefonica, you have many use cases when it comes to your subscriber interactions. What are some of the use cases where you see the most high priority need for best-in-class digital identity verification, and what's driving those? What are your goals?
Okay, I think we are in a really exciting moment regarding use cases. For example, internally, we can see a lot of use cases for reducing costs or increasing productivity. Just, for example, think about the legal department that needs to sign a lot of MOUs or contracts or whatever with third parties. So how do you simplify that process that currently is made with paper-based? So this is a case we are currently trying to solve internally with part of the solutions, and requires identifying the different parties that are signing that document. Another internal use case, very interesting, is also how we tackle the password nightmare. I don't know you, but we internally have a lot of services or applications for employees, and most of them have different passwords. So how do you solve that? How do you simplify that? This is another interesting internal use cases, because I'm sure that is reducing productivity, because at the end you stop accessing many sites or accessing many documents faster, because you have to remember the password or look where I wrote that password and so on. But also there are very, very interesting external use cases we see in our customers. For example, banks are trying to digitalize their processes, making it simpler and speeding up processes. How do I open a bank account? So you need to verify, validate document, and simplify later access to the services that that bank is providing. This regarding online interaction, but probably the most interesting use case I found recently is how physical and digital world are blurring, especially in stores. What most of retailers want to do is to provide better user experience or customer experience. So stores will be, I think, in a close future, like a place where you go to see the products, and probably you end up purchasing those products online. in the same store. So this is an interesting use case that we have to tackle and provide a solution.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. When you think of digital transformation, oftentimes you think of self-service as being the use case, but more and more I see progressive companies thinking through their retail as part of that strategy. Let me go to Hugo, because I think that you covered onboarding in your introduction, but I think that might also relate to some of the use cases that you have for digital identity verification.
In general, the use case, the typical user case that we have is the onboarding, as you were saying, and we provide credit in different formats. We have short-term loans, long-term loans, but we also have point of sale, right? So in point of sale, as my colleague was saying, the challenge is to bring the digitalization to the physical world, and for that we believe that the winning product has to pass through the smartphone, through the device of the customer, right? And so how we do the onboarding in a point of sale is if the customer goes to a retailer and he wants to purchase his some computer or whatever in installments, the salesman is triggering the process through an SMS, which is sent to the customer's smartphone. The customer clicks on a link, and the customer is passing in the point of sale the process using his smartphone. Okay, so the challenge here is to provide an answer immediately to the customer. Traditionally, banks and financial institutions take quite a long time to give a response. And this is providing some drop-off in the sales, some inefficiencies, which we are trying to address. And simply because, you know, as you were saying, the consumers today, they want things now, and there's no point today on buying something and waiting 2 or 3 hours until you can get the computer and go home, right? There's no point in that. So we're trying to solve this.
Yeah, that's really neat, that mobile self-service component of that in-store interaction. David, on behalf, sort of following the line of financial services use cases, can you tell us some of the use cases you see with your clients?
Yeah, I think that in the financial services industry, there's a lot of different use cases that requires a different level of security and identification, authentication. And the challenge for a highly regulated sector like the banks are how to combine being compliant with regulation, improving customer experience, keeping the right level of security, and at the end at the right cost. No? So our experience in banking is that there are more than, in Europe for example, there are more than 30 strong authentication methods deployed. So really the market is highly mature, and the challenge of the banks are evolving through being more digital, keeping the balance between the level of security and reducing the friction with the client. No? So it is not the same, the level of security that you require to open a new account, that you can do it here in Spain with just a video record and your ID, or if you have to transfer $1 million to a bank in Middle East. No? So it's quite different, and I think that the challenge is how to use the different technologies in a smooth way, without being concerned about selecting high complex technology and ensuring that you are able to combine in an agile way these different technologies for the different level of transaction. Even depending on the country, the level of security is different. So this apparently nightmare from a bank, for a global bank perspective, should be managed in the short future probably as a commodity, combining in a flow, in a highly automated flow, all the different identification and verification mechanisms to allow any customer around the globe to have the right level of security to perform the right transaction.
Great. Claire, do you have some input on use cases? And I'd also like for you to maybe go a bit beyond use cases to talk about collaboration and the importance of that.
Sure. So, excuse me, I think from a use case perspective, obviously the onboarding is absolutely key. That's the start of anyone's digital journey. I think when the point about kind of that multi-channel retail experience is absolutely key. So from a retailer's perspective, we may go, on our device to start browsing. Then we might go into a store, and then we may go home and complete the transaction, on a desktop or a laptop. If you think from a pure marketing perspective, unless you can track that user across all of those different channels, you can never truly look at your campaign effectiveness and how you've been able to target that consumer to drive their behaviour to take up a particular product. So obviously the onboarding piece is absolutely key, and that is the foundation, I think, for offering all of these other services. And then when you're in the customer journey, obviously, the colleagues at the GSMA will talk about sign up and sign in and checking out. So if you can get the identity story straight and trusted right the way through, you can actually help facilitate those transactions, and it makes it a frictionless experience. So I think that sort of multi-channel play is really, really important as well.
Great. Let's start talking a bit beyond use cases and into best practices. Christoph, you told us your use case during your introduction, which I think is very interesting, regulation-driven, no more anonymous SIM cards. Can you go into a bit more detail as to your user journey? What tools are you using for identity verification? What technologies, and how that's working? What type of results are you seeing?
Okay. First of all, what was very important in Belgium was we started from the Belgian regulation, and more SIM cards are sold online. And the first regulation said that foreign people were not allowed to do registration online. So with the implementation that we have done together with Mitek, we were able to convince the regulators that we had a good solution, a secure solution, where we could register all identity documents of the world via an online process together with Mitek. So we have now an exception on the regulation that our technology together with Mitek can be used for registration. For us this is very important because now MVNOs can differentiate from other operators, because the online onboarding is very important, especially for people who are coming outside Belgium. So that was very important for us. The way we have done the implementation is that we built a more generic system, that we not only can use the system in Belgium, but outside Belgium also. We see also other countries in Europe are following. So with Mitek we are able to register more than 200 foreign passports, let's say. So that's very important. We can easily deploy this solution outside Belgium. If you look at Germany, we have a customer, a selfie from himself. It's compared together, and within a few seconds, we could say you are allowed to make services.
Mm-hmm. Vicente, do you want to share some of the best practices at Telefonica?
Well, regarding best practices, what I can add is that I think that telcos are well positioned to offer very interesting capabilities. They have key core capabilities, like one of them is that we can offer mobile-based solutions, and the other one is that we have some knowledge of our customers, things that we have followed verification process, highly documented verification processes. So one of the best practices regarding that, because these are two key capabilities, when we offer these or use these capabilities to provide solutions, we want to leverage on that data always with the consent of the customer. That's key. So we know that with the knowledge we have about our customers, for example, the address, if they pay the bill or not, what is their mobile number, and so on, is very worthy in the world, because at the end, this can simplify user experience, for example, in an onboarding process or a registration process. But for us, it's key that we meet regulations like GDPR, and that means that we ask for consent for the customer. in each of these processes. So this is, I think, the best practice we can share regarding that.
Yeah. So GDPR, as I think we all know by now, is largely about the consumer having rights to their own data, in summary. Julio, I think this is interesting in the context of your strategy. Can you tell us a bit about what you see as best practices with IDV, the handling of data, maybe get a little bit into authentication as well?
Yes, well, we took, even before GDPR was finished, we thought that the user was the owner of his own information, identity, and everything. So, and that's what the main concept we insert in our platform, so that everything is developing by cryptology. It's user-centric. Okay, so by cryptology, once you are enrolled, then we have several levels of identifications. Okay, you can be, or for the anonymous, you can be anonymous to access your email address, your Facebook account. It really matters. It doesn't matter if you want to access those kinds of accounts. But then, if you go forward and need to go to a gym, if you need to go to a bank to open a bank account, then you start to create your identity or start to complete your identity inside the platform. And then you are in control of what you give to every person. Okay? And that's, at the end, when we saw GDPR, by cryptology is GDPR for the users. So one of the main problems of GDPR is that it forces all companies to follow it in a standard way. But for the user, you need to go through all those processes into each of those companies, and at the end you will forget in which companies you are enrolled, registered with your information, in which one you have to update, in which one you have to delete it, in which one you have to do or exercise your rights of your information. So by cryptology, centralize that, and it's in your control. So in a way that we by cryptology will be a big data company that cannot manage or cannot handle user data because we don't know what's in the data. We encrypted the data in a way that it's only encrypted by the user, so that in our databases we have no access to the data. So you, as a user, are in control of your whole information. We also have basic information to contact the user. Okay? But besides that, identity, what you've done, tracking, nothing. We cannot do that. We give that to the user.
It looks like you have something to
Yeah,
add.
I was just going to say, I think this is a really, really valid point about consumer not only having transparency over the enterprises holding their data, but actually being able to control what data is shared with whom. So in the UK, as well as GDPR, we seem to, we've had PSD2, GDPR, and now we've got the Digital Economy Bill coming into play. And one of the key parts of that is to prevent minors being able to access inappropriate content. So it's the kind of the grubby side of our industry. And one of those points is you may be happy to share your identity with, an above-board organisation or brand, but you might want, all you need to do, actually, if you want to access adult content, is to verify that you are over 18. That's the only bit of information they need. They don't actually need to know it is accessing that material. So I think that control, the transparency helps build the trust between the consumer and these brands. But then it's that being able to give the control to the consumer. So with technology that's coming along, like, as you've spoken about your products, I think that is really, really important.
David, you have something?
Yeah, I would like to add that, in fact, I think GDPR is a big opportunity for the companies to transform the way they manage the customer identity, because the only way to manage properly things like consent management, data portability, is having a unique identification or really knowing their customers. And most of the big companies probably have different identities of you depending on the company you are or the group, the business unit that you are working in, or depending on the channel. And to address things like consent management, that is key for most of the big companies that manage client data. They need to transform in some way customer identity. So it's a big opportunity.
Yeah, and I think GDPR can actually, at the moment, everyone is thinking of it as this very heavy cost on our businesses. You know, we've got to comply, we're being forced to comply with it, rightly so. But actually, from a consumer's perspective, at some point, I will start to understand the value of my data. So GDPR is going to be really important. And, you know, if you are compliant, surely that acts as a platform to offer better and enhanced value to your services to the consumer.
If you let me add something regarding this, because this is an interesting discussion, I think that part of this is putting the user at the center of this. So he has to be in control of the data. It's like self-found identity. We are a bit far now from that, because at the end, when you install application in your smartphone, you are giving consent to reach or to access some of your personal information. You can always block or allow again, and so on. You have control, but most of the users don't understand that, and they by default give access to all that. And you also have your identity spread around different service providers and so on. So how can we change that and put user at the center so he can have control of his own information? This is a key point, I think, that we have to solve in the future years.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make one note for the audience, which is that we will be letting you guys ask some questions, and I want to make sure we leave some time for that. So if you have questions, think of them, and we'll be asking for those in just a few minutes. Let's go back to Hugo and go back to the topic of some emerging best practices when it comes to digital identity verification. For folks in the audience that might be looking at their own strategies for onboarding experiences, tell them about yours, some of your results. What would be best in class today?
One of the things that I consider some best practices that in a majority of our products, we have two different flows. One is a purely online flow, in which normally we use online banking identification for the customer. So the customer is introducing his his banking credentials into the system, and he's providing us identification. And this is the path that more than 50% of the customers are choosing, right? So it's convenient for them. But on the other hand, 40–50% of the customers, they don't like this option, right? Whether because they don't understand it or because they don't want to input their online banking credentials in some context different than their bank, okay? The thing is that in this flow, we have a manual identification of the customer, so one of our agents is verifying the identification of the customer, okay? So what happens to be a good practice is that in the most complex cases, what we do is we reroute the application from the online path to the manual path, okay? In case that we detect any sign of fraud or simply because the verification provider is not giving us a valid response, then we are doing this handover of the application, right? You know, I think we take this identification part very seriously, as I said. Because we need to be oriented to user experience, but as I was saying, we need to be compliant and we need to fight against fraud, right? So identification is very important for us. And I would say, in summary, that online identification methods work, but it takes time to connect them. It takes time to fine-tune them and make them work. And sometimes UX is needed to be sacrificed, you know, in behalf of compliance, in behalf of fraud prevention, right? So this is for us our approach.
David, can you give us some stories of best practices you've seen with banks? We see banks throughout Europe opening digital channels, creating those onboarding journeys for the first time many times. What are some of the emerging best practices? What types of technologies are working for digital identity verification?
Well, I think that in general, for example, biometric technologies are taking more and more a key participation in most of the digital banking processes. I think that probably in a few years now, we will have all the mobile devices that allow fingerprint identification. Most of the bankings allows fingerprint identification to access mobile apps, and at least to initial identification. Beyond, you need a second factor if you have to provide some transaction. And I think that in general in banking, fingerprint identification for mobile access and voice recognition for call center identification are taking the lead in these technologies. And I think that this process of consumerization of biometrics will lead to drive more agile relationship models between the user and the bank in the short future.
Let's talk a bit about Mobile Connect and its role in this ecosystem. Can you give us an overview of that?
Yeah, I was mentioning before two key assets I think that telcos have, that is the mobile-based channel and also the knowledge of their customers. So Mobile Connect is a portfolio of mobile-based identity services, secure identity services, for giving secure and convenient access. Basically, it allows authenticating a user using his smartphone, by receiving a challenge that has to be solved in the smartphone. It's simply a click OK, or a PIN, or showing the fingerprint, or whatever other biometric solution you want to add to that. So this is for access, but it's also is extending in order to be an authorization request mechanism. So using that authentication capability, customers can also authorize a transaction by completing a challenge that arrives to the smartphone. Simply, again, click OK, or a PIN, or as many factors as you want to add to that process. But beyond that, also allows to add identity and attributes services, basically to verify your mobile number in a transaction, so that, for example, a bank can make sure that you are the owner of a specific mobile number, or also to validate that your SIM card hasn't been swapped, or that is an indicator of risk. So this is what is Mobile Connect. This is using that mobile-based channel, but also the knowledge we know about the customer and its particular situation, like a SIM swap or a device swap, or things that can be added to the risk analysis of that transaction.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes sense that the carriers would play a central role in a new federated identity ecosystem. The banks also have extraordinarily rich identity data. Do you maybe have some insights about?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, what I would add to the comments about Mobile Connect, I think the attributes piece is really underplayed, and I think that is a massive benefit for the operators to add to this environment. You know, your operator knows so much about you when you're moving around, where you are, what you're doing, what your call patterns are, the sites you're browsing, the numbers you're dialing. And so, obviously, I'm a marketing person, so I bring it back to marketing, but from a marketing perspective, that's really, really valuable data to be able to target and use. If you can then build that into payment flows, you know, that's where the banks start to get interested, because actually you can push transactions through more quickly. We've all had the experience where you travel and you go to use your card and your card doesn't work. And then you get home and your card still doesn't work, which just drives you mad. Well, actually, you know, if your mobile device is within, you know, X number of meters of the card that you're trying to present for a transaction, chances are you're there. So, you know, that's I think bringing together operator data and bank data is really where value sits. And one of your points earlier, which I didn't address, was around collaboration. You know, and the fact that these industries have to come together and understand that their value that they can bring to the party.